What's up, everybody? We are back. College football week 7 is upon us, rapidly approaching. You guys know the drill at this point. Betting you, it can't satisfy the needs of the people. We have to do a second episode, and that's what we're going to do. It's going to get greasy. We're getting into the dangerous games, the games that you've never heard of, random teams, anti marquee matchups. But you know what? I think there's some value in these games. I'm Ben Raza. That's Matt Kajeski. We appreciate you guys tuning in, hitting that like button right off the bat, subscribe to the channel. Don't want to miss all this college football content. But sir, we're looking for the bounce back week as we talked about on the main episode. But you also told me some of these under the radar games this week, maybe this is where the value comes in.
Absolutely. And some of the games we bet last week could have been much better, especially Texas State had a lot riding on that particular game. Well, we won't be taking Texas State this week. They're big favorites, 16.5 points, 17 in some spots already. But I do think there's a lot of good games. These are greasy games, but some of them are marquee for their conference. Like UAB is playing UTSA. James Madison's playing Georgia Southern, Georgia State, Marshall. And then, of course, we've got Iowa, Wisconsin, which is the biggest game in the Big Ten West. But I don't know if you're going to find a greasier game on the Week 7 slate overall.
It's bad. We're going to try to get some of the requests. We appreciate all the requests on Twitter. We put some of those games in here. And we're going to start with Iowa and Wisconsin, maybe one of the bigger games that we have on our list today. You mentioned the winner of this gets probably the right to get dismantled in the future. It's a 10-point spread. There is a rogue 9 out there. What do you see? Is this Wisconsin's time to make the step, or can Iowa once again find their way through?
There's so many moving parts to this game. There's weather involved. There's like a monsoon coming through the upper Midwest, which affects Wisconsin, games being played in Michigan, even some played in Illinois, and it affects earlier games more than later games. It subsides a little bit through the day. So that's something to mention too. If you weren't already grossed out with Iowa's punt fest, I mean, Iowa did not complete a pass to a receiver last week. Iowa has fewer completions to wide receivers than Army.
Ooh.
They're not. Can you believe that?
Yeah, that doesn't seem possible because for people that don't know, Army doesn't really throw.
Yeah, fewer completions to receivers than Army. Now they do throw their tight end a lot, but Deacon Hill, his first performance was not a good one. He's the former Wisconsin third-string quarterback from last year, who's now starting games. He can't run or throw. I don't even respect Wisconsin's defense, but can Iowa move the ball against Wisconsin in a monsoon? Probably not. And then on the other side, like Mordecai's been horrible. He was under 5 yards per attempt last week against Rutgers, and Rutgers has a phenomenal defense, but we've got multiple pieces of data on Mordecai now. On the year, 6.4 yards per attempt, just as many interceptions as touchdowns. He's running a little bit, but man, he's been really lackluster. They already lost Ches Malusi, and now you're adding in whatever this wind conditions are going to be in Madison. Find a punt prop, man. Like this game is a disaster.
I mean, I can bring it up in a second. Is the total higher than like 6 points? I mean, what?
It was 36 last I looked, and it was the funny thing is that
34.5.
Yeah, so this opened at 37.5. And it was already set so low that with terrible weather, it's only been able to come down, a couple points because it was already so low.
Yeah, this is disgusting. The team totals on these teams are going to be ridiculous. Iowa's team total is going to be truly comical. I'm not sure there's much to do here. I think if I had to do something, I might look to actually just bet the under on Iowa's team total. I've said this a couple of times with the teams. I said this again about Iowa against Penn State. Like, I'm not sure Iowa can break 10 points. Their team total is 11.5. I don't think they're scoring multiple touchdowns in this game.
I don't think so either. Now that we talk about it, this game is so disgusting that I'm kind of excited to watch it now. I might prioritize this.
No, it's going to be
the rain conditions. This could be comically bad.
I'm all for comically bad. That's where I'd go for this game. I don't think it's the best betting angle. And there's a couple games like that. I want to bring up.
Honestly, I'd probably just take the points with Iowa because like how many, and I'm not taking this. Let's not get it confused. But in a game that might have like 13 points combined scoring. You could still get 10, which is a key number. But man, that's more a bet on Wisconsin not being able to score because I don't think Iowa's going to be able to score.
Use Iowa in sweetheart teasers. Move them 13 points because I don't think either team gets to 21, and you'll just automatically win. Don't actually do that, please. But I want to ask you about Michigan. There's a couple teams. I honestly want to almost group these games together. You've got Ohio State and Purdue. You've got Michigan and Indiana. Like, name your score type beatdowns. Is there anything that you see actionable from a game like this where Michigan is almost 5 touchdown favorite?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people interested in totals in these games, especially the Michigan game, because they've reached the total by themselves in the last couple. Last week specifically, they did that. But there's a lot of moving parts for some of these games. For the Michigan Indiana game specifically, Indiana's off the bye, and they use the bye to change offensive coordinators. So that's a huge data point, which it's going to change projections. And whenever we have something like this, that's a massive moving part that's really hard to quantify. Those are games I generally stay away from. Like this could be maybe they simplify Indiana's offense. Taven Jackson looks better and they don't get beat by as much. Maybe Indiana's completely dysfunctional with the changing OC and things take a turn for the worst. Ohio State, Purdue, there's not as many moving parts, but Ohio State has every single advantage on paper. They're almost like Notre Dame where they've played down to competition throughout the year. So that's something that's pretty hard for me to bet. Other games like this, like Utah has been banished until Cam Rising returns. It's just like I'm not going to take a horrible number on Utah or something, or an opponent against Utah, and then like have Cam Rising play. Bama's in a name your score type game. I saw some people want to hear about Duke, NC State. That's another one where you've got Riley Leonard hurt. How much is he worth to the spread? You're basically guessing on some of these metrics, assuming you know anything about the backup. So those are games I just generally don't bet. And unfortunately, there's a lot of good teams in either blowouts or with a serious injury or a big changing part.
Yeah, so we wanted to rattle through them. Not a ton of actionable spots, but now let's get to some of the greasy games that maybe are a little more, actionable. Troy and Army, 4.5 point spread in West Point. What are you doing here? They battled. Talk about a monsoon. They played Boston College in extreme weather last week, and now they are a live home dog. Or do we think that Troy has the advantages here?
I love Troy here. Took it at 3.5. Would take this through 7, honestly. I'm not buying Army at all. This is a team that lost to Louisiana Monroe. They were outgained in yards per play. Then they come back and they beat UTSA. That was an Eddie Lee Marburger start. Frank Harris did not play in the game. They were outgained by Boston College last week, so no real noise in the final score there. Boston College was the rightful winner. This Army team is pretty bad, and I thought we could gather this coming into the year. They were changing offenses a little bit. They're still running the triple option, but their pass rate's now around 27% rather than like 9%. They've got a couple guys missing. Offensive tackle Shane Buckingham hasn't played in the last 2 games. That's not good for your rushing attack. They didn't have Awan Marshall, one of their receivers, last week. Same thing with Isaiah Alston. So they don't throw a lot, but when they do throw, they were down their top 2 pass catchers. Then on the other side, Troy's been awesome this year. There's no real noise in their box scores. Beat Western Kentucky, Georgia State, and Arkansas pretty soundly. Closest one there being Western Kentucky. They have a loss to James Madison, but that game, they actually outgained James Madison in terms of yards per play. That very easily could have been a Troy victory. And we're seeing James Madison, come in as like pretty big favorites in other games this year. The last thing here, just stylistically, Troy, they're a defensive team. And where they excel is against the run. They're 14th in run defense in the country, going against Army, who can't throw the ball at all. They're a triple option-based rushing attack. Troy doesn't have the best offense. They're 57th, so slightly above average. And where they struggle is up front, their offensive line. But Army's 112th in pass rush. And then Army, they struggle against the run. 70th in run defense. They've got a bad defensive line. They'll be facing Kamani Vidal here, who's leading the country in rushing. I love Troy in this spot. Love them over Army. All of the matchups favor Troy.
I can't bet it because I'm in New York, so I'll be rooting you on.
Aren't you going to the game, Ben?
Yeah. So I actually might not. I was planning on going to this game because I'm going to go to an Army game. I might have to wait In 2 weeks, Army plays UMass. I think I just have to go to that game
Can you go to
instead.
both?
I might have to go to both. We'll see. This is the only game that Army flexes to 3:30. That's the real problem. Because you and me, we're doing a little live before lock action, mostly before Army's game. So we're gonna figure it out. I may be in attendance at the academy, as they say. One more game, another New York game. It's actually right below it. Talk to me about so Bowling Green was part of the Miami shenanigans and the Georgia Tech shenanigans. They knock off Georgia Tech, who ends up knocking off Miami. I don't know what to make of those data points. I haven't seen Buffalo at all. What is the angle here? Is Buffalo the rightful favorite?
Oh man, you missed a sick game, Buffalo versus Wisconsin earlier this year. Gross game.
I did see a little of that, but again, I can't bet Buffalo, so I'm just like never paying attention.
Yeah, that sucks. I need to stop putting on New York games.
No, it's good. It's good. I need to learn about these teams.
I took Bowling Green +6. I think this is a pretty good team, especially on defense. Their offense definitely leaves a little bit to be desired, and I'm honestly not sure who they put out at quarterback. Basilek has been really bad for this team, but he got hurt in the most recent contest. They moved to Camden Orth, and his career numbers honestly kind of rival Basilek. Maybe they're even a little better. This offensive line's not great, but instead of buying Bowling Green, this is more a sell on Buffalo, who really doesn't come in much stronger in any of the key metrics. If you look at the body of work for this team, they beat Central Michigan, and that was a team that can't really play from behind. They also had a pick 6. So, I mean, some of that was pretty noisy. They beat Akron, but they lost yards per play pretty soundly too. 4.6 for Akron, 3.6 for Buffalo. And then same thing against Louisiana. 7.7 yards per play for Louisiana, 4.7 for Buffalo. I don't buy Cole Snyder under center at quarterback. 60% completion, 5.9 yards per attempt, doesn't throw the ball downfield whatsoever. And this is going to be a greasy game overall. Neither team has a strong offense. Buffalo is 110th. Bowling Green is 124th. And then on defense, I think 83rd coverage ranking for Buffalo, 93rd in pass rush. Whether it's Basilek or Orth, they should have more time to throw than they've had in previous games. Like, this is by far the easiest opponent that Bowling Green has faced since they played Eastern Illinois. And then on the other side, like, I don't know that Bowling Green needs to do a lot to stop Buffalo's offense that ranks 110th. And Buffalo has a worse offensive line, shockingly, than Bowling Green, not by much. All this to say, you're probably gathering the metrics are pretty close between these two teams. So anytime you can get like a 6 or a 5.5 with Bowling Green, a MAC school, generally a really volatile conference, I'll take it. I wouldn't put this towards the top of the list like the Troy one, significantly more, and a few others we'll talk about. But if you're betting a bunch of games, I would add Bowling Green.
Okay, Bowling Green. Make a mental note. Maybe throw it into some things. I'm going to keep it moving, but I do want to say first, I know you pretty well. If I told you, hey, just for living in Wisconsin, I got $150 for you, I have a feeling you would be pretty interested. Unfortunately, I don't have that for you, but I do if you happen to live in New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, Iowa, Colorado, or Kentucky. If I just named your state, $150 in bonus bets, $365 if you're in Kentucky, because Bet365 is here. They're ready to go, and they want you to sign up. The link is below. You sign up, you get access to a great book. You're also going to be able to bet 5 and get $150 in bonus bets, win, lose, draw. If you make that bet and you lose, you get $150 in bonus bets. If you make that bet and you win, you get $150 in bonus bets plus whatever you won for the bet. It's that simple. You do have to be 21 plus, only 18 in Kentucky. Please play responsibly. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. But if I just named your state, again, you can go back and listen. Money coming your way. Awesome opportunity. Don't miss out on that because, again, I don't know how long this stuff will be around. Here we go. We're going out west. Colorado State. Boise State. Another interesting game. We've seen these teams as dance partners for maybe some of the bigger schools. Boise is north of a touchdown at most books. Are we back in the live dog here at home, or is this where Boise State kind of can stretch this to double digits?
I like Colorado State again after they burned us last week, but the hook I think is really important here. And two things, Colorado State was up 17-0 in that game and melted away. They lost Torrey Horton, their best receiver. I think he actually might go to the NFL. and they lost Mohamed Kamara, their best edge rusher. These are the two best players in the entire team. They both got hurt in game. Kamara's playing this week. I mean, there was some beat reporter speculation from, I don't know, the Colorado State beat basically just said Torrey Horton's probably a game day decision. I don't know if you believe him. Jay Norvell, their head coach, said there's several day-to-day guys, didn't name names. So, I mean, it's pure speculation whether he plays or not. There are others that think he does play. I mean, these are two huge pieces to this team. I think you have quite a bit of value at 7.5 if these guys play. So it could be one you just simply wait on until pregame warmups and know whether they're playing or not. But to get into the stylistics, Colorado State's defense has been surprisingly good when you adjust for opponent and adjust for number of plays. If you just look at raw yardage, yeah, you're going to see some pretty bad numbers. Like Shedeur Sanders, 348 yards. He was only at 7.4 yards per attempt. So the efficiency wasn't that great for him. Vadiato, 297, 6.8 yards per attempt. So some of these defensive metrics, when you adjust them, are actually pretty good. And they haven't faced a team that could really run on them all year. This team is 19th in run defense. That's really what you have to focus on against Boise. This team hasn't been able to pass. They're running a platoon at quarterback now between Maddox, Madsen, and Talon Green. Madsen's been much better as a passer, but still really turnover-worthy prone. And this Boise State defense is horrendous. They're 127th in the entire country this year. We kind of thought this coming in. They lost a ton of their defense. But, man, I did not think it was going to be this bad for Boise. 127th in total defense is horrible. Colorado State should move the ball just fine at home. And then if they get a couple stops against Boise, I think they can cover the 7 and a hook. So if you're worried about Horton, if you're worried about Kamara, just wait for pregame, see whether they're playing. The Colorado beat will be on it, and then I think you could play it.
Anything, maybe a little splash, plus 250 range?
Yeah, I think that's live. This team is volatile, man. Like, lost to Utah State, but then I actually like Utah State and almost beat Colorado. So they got some weird noise to their games, but they beat Middle Tennessee. That's a good team.
Yeah, they can play a little bit. I mean, we just saw them on an island game. They actually covered for me. It was quite useful. I'm sure there's a name for this. I don't know it off the top of my head, but Nevada and UNLV play in a rivalry game. It's probably something. 9-point favorites for the Rebels. Game's up in Reno. What are we doing here? Nevada, I saw them play a little bit early in the year. You want to talk about bad? They're real bad. What's the move here?
Dude, I think they're the worst team in the country.
No, they might be. Idaho shellacked them, and Idaho is not an FCS school.
Yeah, I legitimately think Nevada is the single worst team in the country. I'm not kidding. No. And some of the efficiency metrics back this up. They're 133rd in total offense, and they're 131st in defense. For reference, there's only 133 teams. That puts them dead last in offensive efficiency and third to last in defensive efficiency. I think this team needs to play AJ Bianco under center, but they already came out and said Brendan Lewis is going to start again. Many of you remember Brendan Lewis from his days with Colorado. The guy can't throw. He has a 59% completion, 4.9 yards per attempt, 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He does run a little bit. That's all he does. But I don't think this team scores much, and I don't think they're going to be able to defend much. UNLV has 2 signal callers who are pretty good. Doug Brumfeld, our hero from last year when UNLV was a pure wagon before they got ravaged by the portal, he's practicing, and he's questionable for this game. And if he doesn't play, Jaden Maeva has been awesome under center too. It's still UNLV. This team's not like a hyper-explosive offense by any means, but you've got 2 capable signal callers, a decent offensive line that's only allowing a 21% pressure rate. So you can keep Maeva clean. You can keep Brumfeld clean if he's active. The defense is 86th. They're better against the run, 67th versus 115th in coverage. I love that against a Brendan Lewis who's not capable of throwing the ball. So your strength on defense for UNLV is up front. That's exactly what you need to beat Nevada. I like this through double digits. The 9 is a very generous number in my opinion.
Yeah, 9.5s are out there. Again, I brought up Odd Chopper before. People will be interested to know, of course, you play for the Fremont Cannon if you win this game. So you get an actual cannon if you're able to. Cool. That's not bad. Not bad. You said it. I know sometimes we joke about some of these teams. Nevada is the worst team in the country. They have nothing. Their offensive line is so incredibly bad. It's not even funny. Just
Yeah,
awful. Tough
they're
team.
horrendous.
Yeah, it's tough stuff. All right, we're going different conference, changing it up a little. This might be my favorite game of the egregious ones, and I'm talking about Georgia State and Marshall. Saw Marshall a little last week play NC State. They actually played them pretty damn competitive. Not gonna lie, don't like them in this spot though. Talk to me about Marshall and Georgia State. Very competitive. Just pick your winner, basically a 1-point spread.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of faith in this Marshall team. They've been very fortunate in their games this year. They beat Albany barely, and then they play East Carolina, who is a bottom 5 team in the country. They don't have a clear quarterback yet, and they gave up 118 rushing yards to Mason Garcia, who they use in a platoon. That's pretty rough. Kyron Drones got this team 75 yards, 5 yards per carry. They were gashed by Bashal Tootin in Virginia Tech. That's not great. And they actually got a win in that game, which was very surprising. Virginia Tech, they were a little bit behind in yards per play, but 9 penalties really cost the Hokies in that game. From there, Old Dominion, 8 yards per play, Marshall 5.5. Old Dominion should have won that game against Marshall, which I don't think a lot of people are going to come out and say, because a lot of people view Old Dominion as a bad team. But Old Dominion actually was on their backup quarterback too, which is another thing to note. You've seen a lot of backup quarterbacks play this Marshall team. And then finally, their most recent game, it was MJ Morris's first start, and he comes out and looks like Patrick Mahomes, throws for 8.3 yards per attempt against this team. Now, Marshall had some success themselves, scored 41 points, but NC State has a horrendous defense. How much are we really gathering from that? Old Dominion has a horrendous defense. They haven't played a good team yet this year, whereas Georgia State's kind of been the opposite. They lost to Troy pretty soundly. They beat Coastal in a game that was a little wonky. Coastal averaged more yards per play than them, but they still got the victory. That was maybe Grayson McCall's worst game. They beat Charlotte. They beat UConn. But when you look at the efficiency metrics, I still think Georgia State is built in a way where you can stop Marshall. Marshall is Cam Fancher under center. He's another dual threat quarterback that doesn't have the best arm. All he does is dink and dunk his way when he's asked to throw, and this team relies on Rasheen Ali. Well, Georgia State's defense is 6th in run defense and 127th in coverage. You have to beat this team over the top, and that's how some teams have been able to beat Georgia State so far this year, is through the air, especially what Troy did last week. But if you can stop the run, you can stop Fancher and Ali, which Georgia State is comprised to do. This should be a spot where they have success on defense. Then on the other side, Marshall plays pretty good defense themselves. They're 9th in total defensive efficiency, but I actually like this Georgia State offensive line. They're only allowing a 21.5% pressure rate. Darren Granger, he's a veteran signal caller, had a little concussion scare last game, got his bell rung for sure, but then he came back in, so I think he's fine. I mean, I still don't buy this Marshall defense, having played the level of competition they have. They haven't faced a legitimate starting signal caller since Albany, and I don't even know who Albany's quarterback is, but East Carolina doesn't have one. Drones was the backup for Tech. Old Dominion Shields was the backup, and MJ Morris was the backup. I don't know. Plus, 2 defenders gone for Marshall. Isaiah Gibson missed their last game. Dateon Smith, a safety, also did as well. I like Georgia State a lot here.
You and me both. Big fan of Granger. Seen this team play. They know what they're doing. Total feels about right. Yeah, Georgia State on the card for me. What about their friends at Georgia Southern? They take on James Madison, they made the transition to FCS. They're fantastic. This team is awesome. 5.5, 6-point spread. I don't really know how good they are in the grand scheme of things, but in this specific spot, are you looking to lay the points or take the points?
I did when it was 4.5, and I want to get your opinion on the current number because I'm a little undecided with James Madison. This team, they're undefeated, but they should have 2 losses. Virginia outgained them 6.5 yards per play to 5.9. Troy outgained them 4.9 yards per play to 4.5. Troy, man, I mean, 2 turnover on downs in the James Madison territory, and they missed a field goal. I mean, geez. But this team has a weakness. It's definitely against the pass. They're 9th in run defense, 67th in coverage. If there was ever a team to exploit this, it's Georgia Southern. They've just been so erratic. Davis Brin, I mean, he has pretty good stats. Nearly a 70% completion, 7 yards per attempt. It's just, man, the turnovers have really, like, they were in the Wisconsin game until he threw them out of it. The offensive line's excellent, just a 17% pressure rate. They're 9th in the country in pass blocking. They can definitely throw the ball over you. The problem is they don't play any defense. And that's going to be an issue against McLeod and all the weapons James Madison has. They go like 4 deep at running back. So I don't think Georgia Southern gets many stops. It's, can they throw over this James Madison weakness and cover a spread that's starting to balloon? I like James Madison for sure at the lower numbers, anything closer to 3. But what do you think about the current number? And do you think Georgia Southern can actually exploit this potential weakness in the secondary? We have a fully healthy James Madison secondary now. Like, one thing I looked at was injuries there. D'Angelo Pons and Chris Chukwuneke, Chris, they were both out for a little bit and they're both back now.
So there are some 5.5s out there. I think I'm okay with that, even at -115. I guess I wanted to ask you, what about over 58.5? Because Georgia Southern, it seems like they can force teams to play this crazy style. And James Madison has a couple of data points where they say, okay, we'll play like that. We can score with you. I think this game could be played in the 30s.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about, is that secondary. James Madison's not terribly slow. They're 90th in pace, so we're talking a little below average. Georgia Southern plays at the speed of light. Yeah, that's actually a really interesting look there. I took James Madison at -4.5. If you're worried about the current number, which I am a little bit, I think the 58.5 is actually really interesting.
Yeah, I look at this and I look at James Madison. Yeah, they don't play crazy fast, but I'm looking at some of the games. Again, I'm cherry picking a little, but like Virginia, Utah State, they seemed comfortable in that type of game, back and forth, and the turn. Like, you feel like you're good for 1 or 2 short fields in this game. Georgia Southern does crazy stuff all the time. 58.5, yeah, I am comfortable. I still lean James Madison, but I think they could push 40 points in this game.
Yeah, I think they could as well. They should have no problem scoring. And best matchup for Georgia Southern, over the top.
Yeah, some big plays. I'm gonna look to that over. Okay, UAB, the Fighting Trent Dilfers. What is going on with this team? 9-point spread against UTSA.
I've had to make a lot of adjustments to UAB in the back end. This team on offense is significantly better than I thought they were going to be. I mean, they lost to Georgia Southern 49-35. They averaged more yards per play. That was a turnover fest. They played some of these other pretty good teams closer than a lot of teams have recently. Louisiana was a 20-point game, but they scored 21. They scored 23 against Tulane. They just beat USF 56-35. So this team has absolutely no issues scoring. A lot of the problems have been on defense, and they're 115th in total defense, 108th against the run, 114th in coverage. You're basically hoping that they can score enough to play with a UTSA team, who I do not have a lot of respect for. This team is really injured, and I don't believe what they're putting out on their depth charts. DeCorian Clark returned last week, but he only played 3 snaps. Their coaching staff came out and called him week to week and said he's probably going to redshirt this year. They then put him on the top of the starting depth chart. So I think we just listened to the coach, but what do we do in other injury situations? Walker Beatty, their tackle, missed their last game. He's on the depth chart, but does that mean he's in or out? I don't know. Mekhi Hart's also been out really since like week 2. This offensive line is pretty banged up for UTSA, which, I mean, I don't really think UAB exploits this much. Their best trade on defense is their pass rush. It's the only thing inside the top 100, and it's 66. So maybe they get some pressure on Frank Harris. I don't know here, but I'm concerned with the UTSA offense. Like, this used to be a high-powered machine. They're now 89th in total efficiency. Surely Eddie Lee Marburger playing a bit has to do with that, but this offensive line is horrendous. They're outside the top 115 in run blocking and pass blocking. It's what got Frank Harris hurt to begin with. Gavorian Barnes hasn't had any success. So can this team score? And I don't know. They have literally one good receiver in Cephas. I don't believe in Tyke Ogle-Kellogg or anything like that. But, man, this is a greasy game. I think UAB has a lot of success against a bad UTSA defense that ranks 112th overall. And this is not an exaggeration. They rank 133rd in schedule-adjusted coverage, which is unbelievable. This is the worst secondary in the country, and they've been healthy. So, yeah, I think UAB scores, and then if you see any inefficiency with his UTSA offense behind a horrible offensive line. Frank Harris playing through an injury without DeCorian Clark, which I think you could see. I like this plus 10, plus 9, anything in this range. I took plus 10 myself.
Yeah, there is a rogue 10 out there. There's some 9.5s. Healthy total, no surprise there for these games. Yeah, UAB, I also will join you in saying not that I was super invested in how good they'd be. I did not really see them being this, not that they're elite, but they have some things working for them. Keep an eye on this team. All right, a couple more, and then don't worry, we're going to get to our best bets. If we don't get to a game, you can always tweet us at JazzRazDFS, at Matt_Gajeski. We're here for you. Let us know in the comments as well. Yowls, Florida Atlantic. They take on, I don't think it's a rivalry game, but it's kind of close. South Florida, 2-point spread, competitive game. We've seen these teams, particularly South Florida. They made some noise against Alabama. What do we got here in this pretty competitive matchup?
I like the over. I took it at 59. 59.5 is still there. Maybe there's a 59. But these teams are both really fast. FAU's 30th. South Florida is second. This is the Alex Golish offense. He was the OC at Tennessee last year. So you're going to see a ton of pace on both sides. The question is, can we get any offensive efficiency from either of these teams? FAU is 121st in offensive efficiency. They already lost Casey Thompson for the year. And Daniel Richardson hasn't exactly played well. 4.7 yards per attempt, 59.5% completion. The guy is like a keg on legs. He can't run. The offensive line's not great, allowing a lot of pressure. But then USF is 102nd on defense. So, I mean, this is a situation where you've got a horrible offense facing a horrible defense, playing with a ton of pace. Could you find some success here? I think the answer is yes. Finally, at some point, they probably do. They also could just run the ball over USF too, which is what they probably should do. Take the ball out of Richardson's hands. Then for South Florida, this is the better offense. How much better is up for debate, but Byron Brown's at least a capable signal caller. 60% completion, 7.3 yards per attempt. Like, these are reasonable stats, whereas Richardson's just incompetent. And then Byron Brown has elite mobility. The FAU defense is better, so this is a problem. But, I mean, they're not generating any pressure. They're 127th in pass rush. USF is going to play at the speed of light, and they finally have a willing dance partner. I like this over based on pace alone, and I think maybe you get some rogue FAU offensive efficiency finally, and I do think USF scores regardless.
There we go. Points on the board. We didn't do this intentionally. Maybe you did. But it's a perfect segue into the next game, which is anti-points on the board. And I'm talking about a game that is near and dear to my heart, Wyoming and Air Force. Two awesome teams. Wyoming, we talked about them. Don't mess around with them when they're in Laramie. They are not here. This is a 42-point total, 10.5-point spread for Air Force. I don't know how Wyoming's going to move the ball against Air Force's defense, and certainly Air Force's, option attack against Wyoming's front. We'll see. What do you read here?
Two extremely slow teams. Wyoming 123rd. Yeah, I mean, Wyoming 123rd in pace. Air Force 133rd. They're dead last. They live through efficiency, and they're very good, so that makes sense. But Wyoming's defense, they're 28th in the country, and they're very good against the run. That's their best skill. 31st in run defense. I don't know if they can slow Air Force for the whole game, but I think you can limit them enough for an under to come here. And then I had a friend last week. We talked on the pod. Wyoming was a request, and it was a stay away for me because of injuries. And I was out hanging with friends and forgot about the game. And then someone texted me. They're like, what's the deal with these Wyoming guys? Did Craig Bowl lie to us? Are they playing in the game? And their beat reporter is very good now. They have a new beat, but I just forgot to do it. And then I go and check, and only one of the guys missed the games. We actually got some accurate information from Craig Bowl. And what this means here is that Wyoming has a mostly healthy defense. There's only one guy that missed the last game that's a main contributor. He's a corner, which doesn't matter too much against Air Force either. But it saved me a unit adding Wyoming late because we got good injury news. And they should be pretty healthy here on defense, which was the biggest concern heading into last week's matchup against Fresno. So I think a fully healthy Wyoming defense can limit Air Force enough to see this under come in.
Yeah, this is a game. You get one Air Force drive that doesn't end in a touchdown. That's a typical you're talking 8 minutes off the clock. They live through efficiency. It's a cool team, and they know what they're doing. I just pace-wise, the number of possessions in this game is gonna be comically low. So if you avoid any over the top or turnovers, I think this cruises under. I'm not even gonna touch the spread because I like Air Force. I'm just not sure. 10.5 is so many points in a game where it's like, I think there's 21-13 equity in this game, a lot of it.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Interesting game. All right, we got a couple more. I also wanna mention, as I've been doing, Odd Chopper. I bring it up to help you guys so you can see the spreads quickly and easily. But I also, that part is fun, but it's a lot less fun than just pulling up the best bets tool, seeing what's populating, seeing where the edges are, being able to filter, use your bankroll tracker, say, okay, I want to make a parlay on DraftKings today. Let's see what we got going on here. Boom. Here's all the spreads. If you want any of this stuff, the link is below. It's along with that Bet365 and our Discord and all that good stuff. Get involved. Join this Odd Chopper community. Test this stuff out. We want to absolutely get you inside the ropes. All right. What do you say we do? I think we got time for one more game. Let's do it. And we're going to make it Miami of Ohio and Western Michigan. What a game it is. What a way to wrap this up. And then we'll do our best bets. What's the deal? I need Western Michigan to lose games. Are they going to lose here?
I think they're going to lose.
Good.
This is a weather game for sure. But
Good.
I've been keeping my eye on the weather definitely affects Western more than it does Miami, Ohio. But I've been keeping my finger on the pulse of this game because of the weather. This is right around the time the weather's expected to subside. So we're starting to get like 60% chances of rain, and the wind comes way down, which was the biggest concern. Wind was at like 26 miles an hour. Now it's down to 15 at kickoff. I think we're actually getting milder conditions than we would have normally gotten earlier in the week if this forecast held. So I'm looking at over under 44.5 towards the over. If the weather clears in this game, the total opened at 52.5. Both of these teams play with some pace. Western in particular does. This team is trying to switch to an air raid offense, which they've had some success with. They're actually 29th in pace. And then Miami, Ohio, they're not fast whatsoever, but they're just a good, efficient offense with Gabbert under center. They're the better team, so they're going to score on Western regardless. Western's defense is not very good either. So I think you've got Miami living through efficiency, and Western, with this air raid pass heavy attack, they need the weather to go in their favor, but it looks like it's going to. And positively, Western didn't have their starting quarterback last week. Bourget didn't play. They started Salopek, who's atrocious, but then he was so bad that they moved to Hayden Wolf. Many of you remember him from his Old Dominion days. The guy has 22 career starts. He was dissecting Mississippi State. They were live to win that game at one point. They definitely covered. Man, like Hayden Wolf, he's not a bad backup. I honestly thought he was going to start the year. I can't believe he was their third string. I don't know what this coaching staff is doing at practice, putting Salopek out there. But anyway, it seems they figured this out. This is a really greasy over because of the weather. But at 44.5, I think you've got a lot of ways that it gets there.
Yeah, I mean, one angle, again, it's not a blind theory, but sometimes with the weather, it overreacts. I've been guilty of that. Oh my God, the total drops a full touchdown and then it's not that bad. And this seems like that could be the case. Hayden Wolf, wow, didn't see that coming in the show, but that's why we do this. Okay. Say it to you every time. Maybe you're in one of the 6 states that I mentioned for Bet365 to get your $150. New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, Iowa, Colorado, Kentucky. Just want to get that out there. Maybe you're not and you got a couple bucks in your pocket and you say, okay, I need a few greasy bets on the card to make my Saturday that much more dangerous. You were only going to a couple spots. Where would you put your money?
My 3 favorites. First, Troy over Army. Whether it's 3.5, 4.5, I think it's fine. Troy's defense is comprised to stop the run, and Army's had trouble stopping opponents. Troy, very, very good rushing attack. They'll exploit that weakness in the trenches for Army. Second for me is Georgia State, whether it's +1 or -1. Anything around that 0 mark is completely fine. Marshall has not been tested, facing a bunch of backup signal callers this year. They're finally going to get tested against Darren Granger. And then my third one would be UNLV over the literal worst team in the country in Nevada. I think anything, if you can get under 10, that's great. If you have to do 10, that's completely fine as well.
You definitely can find it. There are 9.5s out there. I'm gonna throw in Colorado State. I like that spot. Anything north of a touchdown. I think that this is a team we've talked about. Boise State's got some serious defensive issues. They're at home. More competent than I would have thought. I've seen them play some better teams than this and hold their own. I think this is a nice little 3-pack of some interesting, greasy games. Not too bad for week 7. Again, if you missed the original episode, if you're looking for the marquee teams, we've got you covered here on Odd Chopper. Just check it out. Our college football deep dive on Betting You. This is the kind of second episode. We are so happy that we're able to do this. It's because of your support. Hitting the like button, subscribe, leave in the comments. It really does help us out. Tell a friend. Share this podcast, anything that you guys can do to help us. We'll do the show every day if you want us to. I absolutely love doing it, and college basketball will be here soon enough. But you know what? We got a lot going on here, so we're going to bounce on out. Hope this was informative. Again, any questions? Matt_Gajeski at JazzRazDFS. Any final words for the people?
2 extras we didn't get to talk about. I'm probably going to bet Rutgers against Michigan State. Caden Hauser starting, and then I did bet LSU. That secondary is horrible, but Auburn can't throw. Last 2. Otherwise, thanks, guys. Love being able to do this for you. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully turn it around this week. Get some W's on the card.
We're going to put some W's on the card. But until next time, guys, thanks again for tuning in. Good luck in your week 7 college football wagering. And of course, we'll talk to you next week.